Hello, Eric.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It is going good. It is going good for me, but it looks like it's going great for you.
It is. Yeah, I feel very, very blessed and very fortunate. It is. We're currently, just ended like day three of our already our most successful Kickstarter yet. So this is Kickstarter number 20, and it's our most successful by a large margin. So I'm feeling very fortunate and very blessed right now. And yeah, it's going great.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with all the things that I'm doing, it's like, I'm sure you're getting the same mode where your head's down and you see a thing, and you're like, I don't know what that is. And it's
Yep.
like, oh, that was kind of cool. I better get Eric on to tell me what this is all about. Dark Places and Demogorgons, which isn't a new thing, right?
No, it's not. Yeah, I created what I called the survive this gaming system, which is really it's a house ruled version of BXD&D, is what it is. But it kind of changed up. It was what I had been running for years myself, and kind of we mixed some stuff in from fifth edition, but at its core, it's BXD&D. And funny enough, it's an OSR game, but a lot of people just said they didn't want to learn a new rule set, but kept asking us to put out an OSR version. And I'd always say, but this is an OSR game. So eventually, we came around. We decided let's do it for Old School Essentials, because I really loved what Gavin Norman and Necrotic Gnome did with that game. The retelling of BXD&D. And everything. And so I said, well, let's match up with that. And I thought it was a good idea, and I think it's turning out that it is, because a lot of people seem to be really excited about doing this, and not just my people who've been playing Bloat games for years, but we're getting a lot of new people in who had never played our games before, never heard of us before, never even heard of Dark Places and Demogorgons, but they like the concept, and obviously they love Old School Essential. So it's been great.
So what is Dark Places and Demogorgons?
Sure. Dark Places and Demogorgons, it's very much a love letter to horror movies in the 80s. It definitely, obviously, from its namesake, you know that it's inspired by shows like Stranger Things, The Goonies, stuff like that. How it came about is I was watching the very first episode of Stranger Things, and about 10 minutes into watching it, I said, this needs to be a game. I started writing it. I got about 44 pages in, hopped on Kickstarter one day, and there was a game called Tales from the Loop kickstarting. And I said, oh, somebody beat me to it. Never mind. But then I started watching. I said, wait, I'm doing something different. And so I continued on, made my version of what my game is, and stuff. And it's funny because there's several games out there. There's Tales from the Loop, Kids on Bikes, Stranger Stuff, a whole bunch of games that are out there. And really, we all do things a little bit different. Even though it's set in the 1980s, you play as high school teenagers, typically in small towns. Each game, mechanically and thematically, achieve their own thing. So mine is geared more towards playing a session of Dark Places and Demogorgons. It's kind of like watching an 80s teen horror movie. So like any movie by like Wes Craven or John Carpenter from that time period, teens, where the teens have parents that they don't get along with, they're getting in trouble at school, and weird things are happening, and nobody believes them, and they got to figure out what's going on and fight the monsters. And that's what Dark Places and Demogorgons is all about.
Okay, so it's that's interesting. So and you're right, the mechanics seem to also, mechanics do a lot with the feel of a game, and it's kind of like the the traditional swords and wizards. It's like, from RuneQuest to D&D to who knows what. They all provide a completely different feel for, and they're all aiming for something different.
Yeah, that's how. Yeah, that's what that's kind of the example that I use when people will say, well, you're just one of those 80s games. Throughout time you get those occasionally, and my thing is, Well, there's a huge difference between Dungeons and Dragons and Warhammer and Tiny Dungeon Second Edition. Like those
Exactly.
are all completely different games, and they're all fantasy games. I said, so yes, we are one of those 80s games, but we're different from, and each of those games are different from each other. So there's plenty of room out there for everybody to exist peacefully and still have fun.
Yeah, and I think right, and the big one, the Tales from the Loop, is definitely a huge one. But boy, they're really leaning deep into their own thing. I mean, other than just being kids, experiment or not, experiencing the weird and trying to figure it out is kind of where they're at, not necessarily the. Well, I shouldn't say I haven't actually bought it, but it seems from the younger, at least the younger version, it's not really about things being deadly as much as it is probably trying to understand what's going on.
In fact, your characters can't die in Tales from the Loop. That's one of the concessions that they made, is they didn't want to make a game about children where children were getting slaughtered. I made mine about teenagers, and I was okay with high school teens characters getting slaughtered. I come from obviously the OSR. I come from the old school background, so my games have a higher lethality than modern games, but not like higher than like traditional or old school Dungeons and Dragons or any of the OSR type variants. You'll find we're right at home with that. But so that wasn't something I shied away. That's one thing that makes it a little bit different than like Tales from the Loop. And
I think I think Tales from the Flood, I think there is character death is on the table, but they're older. But I don't think they leaned heavy into it as it would be. I'm assuming, making some assumptions. I don't think they're leaning into it's like a Freddy Krueger movie. They're more leaning into, or that is a possibility, but it's probably, I would imagine, not. There's no TPKs.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you? I mean, obviously, well, I say obviously, but with Old School Essentials, really was established in a lot of ways, in a ways again for not just also, but the BX and the early D&D was more aimed at combat, where that's less of a situation that one has when with teenagers dealing with situations. So how do you deal with that rule set and and that style of play, which is really still quite a bit different?
Right. Yeah. That's one thing, and it is explained both in the Old School Essentials version and also in the original Survive This version. You're not knights, like war-hardened knights and wizards, going down into caverns to fight monsters on a regular basis. You are regular teenagers in the 1980s. So a lot of Dark Places and Demogorgons is about trying to figure out how to either defeat or trap or get rid of a monster, much more than going head to head. People who run in there kind of with the like a murder hobo type mentality, or like a 5th edition player who's used to being pretty protected when it comes to things. They can pretty much go up against anything head to head and they're going to survive. Some of those people have a hard time transferring that, but in Dark Places and Demogorgons, there's it tells you kind of right up front that you can run away from any fight. You're not there necessarily to fight the monsters. You may be more likely to trap the monster in a shed and burn the shed down, something along those lines, than necessarily picking up a baseball bat and trying to go head to head with a werewolf or something like that.
Yeah, and I think obviously Stranger Things, it kind of set that, I think, in a way that people can now really fully grasp. Or maybe in times past it's like that doesn't make any sense, but I think after having most people have seen at least one season of that, and it makes much more sense, where it's like, oh yeah, there's this scene here and this scene here and this scene there, where they can kind of tie in to understand what that kind of place should be about.
Exactly. Yeah. The more you watch like Stranger Things and stuff like that, the more you'll see I always say this kind of jokingly, but it's true. It's like a Scooby-Doo episode. There is a lot of running from the monsters until very end, when the monsters revealed to be something not what you thought it was, or like in Stranger Things, they're pretty much running from the monsters each season until the very end when they figured out how to beat the monster and what its weakness is. So that's more of the style of play of Dark Places and Demogorgons, as opposed to, each week you go up and fight a new monster, kill it, gain as much XP as you can to go up a level. There's kind of a difference. It's a different state of mind, really.
So did you bolt on any skills, and like, how do you handle classes for this game?
Well, there is skills on in the Survive This version, the Dark Places and Demogorgons. In the OSE version, there's no skills set as a common rule. Now, in the back of the book, there's several indexes full of optional rules, and those will be optional rules. And the reason why we did that is we wanted these to be 100% mechanically with everything that Gavin had done before for old school essentials. So there's no in BXD&D, there's no real skills aside from like thief skills and some wonky things like that. And so we continued that on. Now the classes are based kind of like it started off very much inspired by the Breakfast Club. So you had like the nerd, the geek, the prep, the jock. And in Dark Places and Demogorgons, you're going to find the nerd, the geek, the prep, the jock, the metalhead, things like that. But you're also going to find things like the breakdancer, the karate kid, and even up to, there's some optional classes that's like the mystic, the scion, the talking animal, so you can literally play Scooby-Doo if you like to. And so those are things that we've added on to that's how we've handled it. Whereas it's not so much about like different races and different things like that. It's more about your normal high school kids. This is what you do, and you may have in some of the optional classes you may have a super ability or something along those lines, but typically that's not going to be a whole party of kids. That's going to be like in Stranger Things, they'll be like elves. One person has some kind of powers and they might get relied on, but then they also become kind of the biggest target for whatever monster's looking for them. So
yeah, I think it's the Monsters of the Week. They follow that sort of pattern where it's which I think makes a lot of sense. But I think even though with the Apocalypse engine, there's still probably more complexity when it appears, but I would think with a OSE, you're probably dealing more complexity than say they did with the Apocalypse engine with Monsters of the Week. So like, how'd you go through? Maybe balance isn't that important. Maybe everything is something like, so how do you differentiate mechanically, the nerd versus the skateboarder?
All right, so each class is going to have its own set of like class features, and these are going to be things that they excel at. So like the skateboarder is going to be very agile. It's going to excel at obviously riding a skateboard, doing things to that matter. The breakdancer, again, going to be very agile, going to excel at things like dancing, things like that, very basic, simple things. But then we've added flavorful things that are reminiscent of the 1980s. Really, with our game, we tried to inject as much nostalgia into our game as possible. And so you're going to find things that are represented that characters from movies of that time have been able to do. There'll be superpower or abilities rather in each thing. And that's part of the fun of converting them over from the Survive This to the OSE, is going back and revisiting and either beefing up ones that needed to be adjusted or powering down. As far as game balance, I am not a huge proponent of game balance. I think that everything should be in the world. And, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, your first level character, if you wander into the wrong cave, there may be a dragon in it. But aside from that, I know some people really love to have everything balanced and fair. So all the monsters and the classes are balanced as far as like what is the normal within the confines of BX Dungeons and Dragons. So you'll find like ratings and stuff like that for hit dice and all those normal stuff. And then it's up to the game master to choose the monster that would be appropriate to go up against the party that they're running.
I would mean so much like for monsters, but more for like, there's some games where it's like a person picks a particular class or whatever, and they get to do all the cool stuff, and then everybody else is just kind of, you know, probably like a wizard. You know, the traditional wizard would stink at early levels. The later levels, everybody's just watching the wizard just do everything. You're like, okay, why am I here? It's like,
no, I totally get that. Yeah, but really, you find that that doesn't or at least I've found you know, with Dark Places and Demogorgons, that doesn't happen as much, because really the kids aren't skilled. They're high school kids. What separates them is kind of their interests and what they naturally or maybe physically inclined to do. But there's not a large thing from, like, you know, if you look at like the jock, which would be one of the, like, he'd be the most attuned to like a fighter class, something like that. There's not a huge difference between what a jock can do and what a nerd can do. So like the nerd class will be obviously intelligence based, so they do a lot more stuff that involves intelligence. Jocks much more physical stuff, but they're still just normal people. So there's not like a huge difference, if that makes sense.
No, and I think the thing is to me, it's also what's maybe as interesting is really as far as a archetype, like what can't they do?
Right. Well,
you know?
and that's actually something, like, no one is limited. Everybody in these games can attempt anything. Now, like, obviously you can't attempt to cast a spell if you're a normal teenager. That's not an option. Things like that. But a lot of the newer or more modern games, more modern versions of Dungeons and Dragons, I don't want to say games because most RPGs are not this way, but I feel kind of they limit the classes to the people who are looking at their character sheet to see what they can do. Whereas I come from the old school train of thought of ask, everything's an option, try to do it, let's see what happens.
Well, I mean, even just from a character, if you think about like what can't a jock do, you know, what can't a nerd do? Like maybe the nerd can't ask the lovely woman or lady out to the homecoming, or maybe you can't go into, but the jock can't hold his own in a social event with the nerds that he needs to be. I mean, you know, I think that's kind of interesting where you look at, you know, all these characters, you know, like Elle, she's got all this power, but she can't function in society.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's like, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, and that's really kind of the same with like our optional classes that I mentioned, because obviously if you're an animal that has the ability to speak like a talking dog, like Steve, you can't just walk around talking in the 1980s. You can't walk around casting magic spells in the 1980s. People are going to notice that, so it becomes much more you know, having to hide your secret and being very selective about when you choose to use your powers versus just being able to run into a town with you know, wands blazing and make it happen. So
right, exactly. And especially, I mean, it is kind of very thematic excuse me, with the satanic panic, with, you know, with powers, you know. So I think that definitely can get reinforced.
Yep, and the satanic panic is part of the game. Like, that is something that's going on. So there's a little bit of a meta game, or a meta inside the game. The kids in Dark Places and Demogorgons play Dark Places and Demogorgons. So and the preachers are the villainous preachers, rather, let me say that, are out to get their books and confiscate them due to the satanic panic, and are blaming the kids who are going missing because of the monsters on the kids who are playing Dark Place Demogorgons. So it's very much, you know, a love letter to my youth and how I had to grow up, and that's all definitely infused into this game.
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate. I mean, we obviously grew up at the same time period, but I didn't face, you know, my parents were fine with it. And they asked the pastor about it, and he was like, yeah, it's just no big deal. So I didn't necessarily have to face that whole onslaught of weirdness, but still.
Yeah. My mom was fine with it too, because she always thought, well, all the boys are here, I know what they're doing. But occasionally, like every couple of years, there would be a thing where she's like, well, they're saying on TV, Eric, I just want to make sure, and something along those lines. But then I know, I mean, I had some books taken away from school and burned. So
Oh, really?
that happened. Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I can't remember her name. Miss Thornsbury. I can't remember. It's something Berry. It was in middle school. She burnt one of my books in the trash can in her class to prove a point.
Which was what? When she's a terrible person.
Yeah, that was pretty much. So yeah, so that was very much a part. And I know lots of other kids who had their books confiscated. In fact, once in ninth grade, I not Dungeons and Dragons, but I brought Rifts books to school, and I had a lady by the name of Miss Carson confiscate my Rifts books, and I snuck out of class and went to her office and stole my Rifts books and just went home. I just cut the rest of the day.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was like, no, she's not getting my books. Forget that.
So, for what reason were you actually reading when you shouldn't, or was he just decided?
She just decided that the content, the Rifts books, if you're familiar with it, they have the cover of the core Rifts book has a monster called the Splugglorth, and it has 3 blonde ladies who are like his minions.
Yeah.
And she decided that the Splugglorth and the women were sexual in nature, and just decided that was inappropriate for a kid to have, and took them from me.
Yeah, rather than just saying, Eric, would you just mind not bringing them to school?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what was so funny is that like the teacher who saw it had an issue with it, but she never said anything to me. She went over and called, and the woman who took it was like one of the assistant principals, who came down and made me empty out my backpack and look through all my books and took it. So yeah, it was something else. But yeah, that happened in ninth grade. I'll never forget that. At J-Town High, which is in the book, because Dark Places and Demogorgons is all set in a fictionalized version of my hometown. So
so you get your final revenge.
Yes. And let me just say that there is a stand-in for that assistant principal, and I did not treat her very kindly. She is not described with much love.
Well, yes. Yeah. And I think, probably younger people, watching the Stranger Things, even though it was, exaggerated, it wasn't like overly exaggerated.
Right.
And it's like, in fact, I just posted something on, it was a library in a town that's probably like 15 miles from here, they're 20 miles from here. They were saying, it was like Teach D&D Day, at the library, and I just forwarded, or I posted, and I just said, "You've come a long way, baby." And then I had an old friend, an acquaintance, start down that path. It's just like people are like, "Who boy?" It's like,
yeah.
It's like, yeah. I posted. There's an article. There's a great. Do you ever listen to Cautionary Tales?
Yes.
He covered the Satanic Panic. Did a very good job. I posted that, but anyway, I thought that was just an amazing show where he kind of goes through that whole thing. And I think what's odd is how much it was built. I mean, we could see it. How much was just built on lies. Right.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There was that was something that always irked me. Of course, I made myself a target. I didn't mean to, but like I was the kid in the 80s who had the long hair, wore all black, the heavy metal band shirts, which half of them had like pentagrams on it. So I wasn't helping my case any. But I always knew that like I was like, well, no one else gets it. They just don't get it. So, but yeah, it's something else. I'm so glad to see how the times have changed and how much more normalized and accepted role-playing games are in general, not just Dungeons and Dragons, but all role-playing games. So that's very good.
No, I agree. I think it's really been It's been probably one of the more positive. I posit it's probably one of the most positive cultural things that's actually happened. I think in the last 40 years or whatever.
Yep, for sure.
It's kind of it can be very democratizing as far as it's not as diverse as I would like it to be, but at least as far as socioeconomic backgrounds and different types of people playing, it's just like you can go to a game convention and everybody just sit together and having fun and socializing and it seems to be a very positive thing.
For sure. Well, yeah, and people even use it now for therapy. Like lots of therapists use it in a group setting, so to help people. I know that specifically, I've donated books to this local foundation around here that they do role-playing games for people specifically on the spectrum with autism, and it really helps them to come out of their shell and to learn kind of what is socially acceptable and what's not through the interactions with other people. And so yeah, that was something I was more than happy to do. But yeah, so it's amazing, just how far it's all came.
Oh yeah, I agree. It's just this, yeah. And I think it seemed like we were on a precipice. It seemed like World of Warcraft had killed the tabletop RPGs, but we rose from the ashes, and it's just it's healthy now that it's the kids who. It's funny because I think the people that didn't grow up with video games being as complex, once they saw those complex video games, were sucked into it. But the people that grew up with those complex video games, to them, that was normal. But seeing the pen and paper RPGs, they see value in that too. It's not it's a choosing of either or, but they kind of thought, okay, the generation is lost. We've lost this war. We're just stuck with a handful of companies, and we're in a bunker, and we'll just, I guess, finish out our days with a handful of RPGs that we got. But here you are, Dark Places and Demogorgons.
Yes.
So yeah, you've published more than one game, I see.
Oh yeah. We've been quite busy here at Bloat Games. Obviously, Dark Places Demogorgons our biggest game. We also did Vigilante City, which is probably our second biggest. We've done another game called We Die Young. I think all in all, I'm up to somewhere around 40 total RPG books. Now, some of those, like Dark Places Demogorgons, has like 10 books. The original survived this version. So we have definitely been around publishing. Most of what we've done, in fact, almost all of what we've done has been in the OSR sphere. But we are slowly branching out to do more stuff like 5th edition, and hopefully on to more systems, like more indie systems or more rules light systems. Those tend to be where I gravitate to, like my heart gravitates to the most. While I'm very used to the old school essentials, not old school essentials, but old school OSR games. The older I get, the more the rules just get in the way, and the less rules, the better for me.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it depends, but yes, they do. I don't run as many games as I would like, and I don't get to play as many games as I'd like, but I do agree, and I think what I enjoy more are it seems like mechanics that do things that are narratively interesting.
Yes.
Rather than just being, and I think what I liked about like some of the things with like the Powered by the Apocalypse with this dungeon world or something is sometimes people make a rolls and they get to ask questions. Like that's pretty powerful, but it's not overly powerful, and it kind of helps like with investigations and all this sort of stuff where you make a roll, you get to ask one question, make a really good roll, you get to ask 3 questions. And I think or maybe you just get certain powers in certain situations, and I think those are much more interesting than just the things related to combat, because I think they cause people to start thinking more about their environment and what's going on, rather than just kill the monsters in one room, go to the next.
Yeah, exactly. I agree 100%. and I think too, I think a lot of the younger generation are much more in tune with their feelings, and so I think that's why a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games really appeals to them. Things like Monster Hearts, and I mean I could go on and name a whole bunch, but there's a lot of games that are more about how your character feels than about what your character does, and I think that really more so than the older generation. I think the younger generation really is really drawn to that.
Right. It's less right. It's like the subsystem. Like if it's not that your superheroes is the main thing. That's the minor thing. The major thing is you're having all these crazy teenage angsty moments going on. Same with Monster Hearts. It's just, but I've got a friend, well, I say friend, an acquaintance, Finland, and they do LARPs, but they're like, there is no way in this world I would ever do one of their LARPs, but it's like, they're very emotional, real life kind of things, like, okay, it's World War II, you're in a bunker and you've been shelled for 3 days. And now everybody plays normal people in a bunker as the food's dwindling and things are looking bleak and the Germans are coming and they'll do that for days.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't think I can handle that kind of intensity. And but for some culture, even culturally, so I think you're right. I don't know if it's just, I think the younger people are in the United States more in tune or want to express those feelings. I think that is true, but I think it's definitely a culture thing, and for us it's the younger culture rather than the men like us who are raised a certain way to think a certain way and not demonstrate feelings in public for whatever reason.
Right. Exactly. For sure. Yeah. No, I definitely know that.
It's like, yeah. So when did you start doing that? So when did you start producing games?
Our first role-playing game was 2016. A game called Survive This Zombies. That now has got a second edition. But originally I kind of based it after the old white box Dungeons and Dragons books. So it was like, with that you got like 4 little zine style books, and then Places and Demogorgons was the next one, which was our first like full real book. And so we've been going strong since 2016. So, and our first game was actually a tabletop card game called List Off, which is a trivia based card game. It's kind of like playing Uno and Trivial Pursuit at the same time. Really fun. But funny enough, now we're branching out more into the tabletop games as well. So we got a game coming out called like Play, Rewind, Eject. And then, we got another game that hasn't been announced yet that's in pre-production. That's a licensed property, which we're very excited about.
Oh, that is exciting.
Yeah. So a lot of good things are happening. And on top of that, we got a ton of I think 8 role-playing game projects in the works, which the Dark Place Demogorgons for OSC. I mean, that includes we're up to 9 adventures and 3 core books. So that just counts as one project. So we got a lot going on at Bloat Games and a lot of stuff that I'm really excited about, and feel very fortunate that I get a chance to do. So yeah.
So for the licensed product, so the I guess question is like, what? So you came up with an idea. There's a license that you assume you liked, and you're like, you know what, I want to do a game. I can see a game, and then you went and pursued then licensing that.
Well, did it a little bit differently. What I did is I came up with a game that I wanted to do. I made the game, been play testing the game for about a year, and getting really wonderful response. And but the theme of the game that I was doing was really kind of generic. And I don't mean that like in a harsh way. It wasn't like the game was terrible, but the theme was just something that had been done over and over. And so I thought about, well, what if I took this and applied this to use another theme, but kept the core mechanics the same, kept everything else the same. And it worked out that there was property available, or a property that I didn't know was available, but I reached out for it and was able to get it. And so yeah, so now we're in the process of just kind of overlaying that theme onto the existing rule set and stuff, and making sure that everything's tweaks and making sure it feels right. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to put it out just because the license popular. I want to make sure that we put out a good game that has this license that is not only a good game for us, but that also pays homage and stuff to the people who have been a fandom of this game before. So we're really looking forward to that one, and just making sure that everything lines up perfectly before we officially announce it and pull the trigger and all that.
So how do you initiate, like, so how'd you initiate the communication with, like, did you just
basically just a query. I sent out a letter saying, hey, this is what I do, this is what I'm known for, this is what.
But who'd you send it to?
This is a creator themselves, so I was able to work directly with the creator. I didn't have to go through like a licensing broker, which is a huge nightmare. I've tried that and not much luck, especially for like the volume that we do. But this was something that has a fan base that has not grown to where it is a commodity where there was still one person who I could reach out to and say,
right,
hey. And so I was able to reach out and say, this is what I do. This is what, I really like what you've done. I think that this would work, and kind of laid it out, and then ended up going and playing testing the existing game that I had with that creator, and he really liked it. And about 2 months later, we had contracts signed and everything ready to go. So
that was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was, and it was very exciting because it's it was very much out of our wheelhouse at Bloat Games. What we're really big into, especially with when it comes to our role playing games, is genre emulation. So like Dark Places and Demogorgons, is obviously the Stranger Things and horror movies of the 80s. Vigilante City is very much a love letter to Batman the animated series, and like X-Men and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we're very big into like genre emulation as far as that goes. But this was something that was all new to us, as far as getting an existing property and making sure that it feels right. I didn't want to just have somebody else's like art and characters on my stuff and have it be my stuff. I wanted it to feel like a natural progression for what they were already doing. So.
Right. Yeah, it's just I didn't read one other person who they went through and got the Chew license for the comic book.
Ah, yes.
And it was just pretty fascinating, just the interactions and how that all worked, and it's it's definitely a different animal altogether going that going there. It's also, I mean, for you, I'm sure that the licensings can vary, but a lot of times it's money up front, I assume, and it's you've got skin in the game, and that, I'm sure that raises the like for instance, the next Kickstarter I'm doing, I have more money laid out up front, so now there's more risk.
Yes,
and it's like I did the calculations, like I think I can always sell 100 books. So it's like, okay, I should be at least fine, but you don't know.
Right.
Because nobody said, Eric, it wasn't like 10,000 people says, Eric, we want an Usagi Yojimbo card game or whatever it may be.
Right. Right.
They're not saying that. You're like, I really like this. I really like my game. I feel like other people like it too.
Yes. Well, and I feel that way about every project. I mean, even so, Dark Places and Demogorgons are our most popular game. Like I said, we got like 10 books in the original series and stuff. So I knew it had a fan base, but even with that, going into the Dark Places and Demogorgons for Old School Essentials, It by far, I mean, probably 5 times the budget of any creative endeavor I've done so far. And so to it was very scary. I was like, if this doesn't hit, boy, am I am I in
Yeah.
trouble.
I know what you're saying. It sounds darn correct. And that's I don't think people realize it. And I think the problem is when you in hindsight's always 2020, right?
Yes.
It succeeds. You're like, well, of course it succeeded. Well, you just don't know. You don't know.
Right.
But I will say, I don't know what the rest of the book is like, but at least from the image that you paid for that cover.
Yes.
That is a brilliant cover for what you're doing. So I think every dime spent on that artist was well worth it.
Yeah, that was done by Runehammer, also known as Brandish Gilhelm. He's the guy who created the Index Card RPG. He and I have worked together before. When I created Vigilante City, he came on and did all the art for it. He's done art kind of hit and miss for us. Then he went on to make like an index card version of Vigilante City and stuff. And so we got a really great working relationship. And I just went to him and I said, hey, would you be interested in doing the cover art for Dark Places and Demogorgons for Old School Essentials? I told him that it was going on. And he said, yeah. And I said, do you want me to give you any pointers or description? He said, nope, I got this. And so, that always worries you as a person, because typically I like to give my artists as much creative freedom as I can, but I usually like to say, well, this is kind of what I was thinking. But when he sent back that finished art, I was like, oh, that's brilliant. That is, and a lot of this campaign success is very much coming from the back of that cover.
Oh, yeah.
So,
because what you did is you created a feeling with that art.
Yes. Yeah, he 110% nailed what Dark Places and Demogorgons is, and the feeling of playing a session in the art. Of all the art pieces that I've had for all of our games, it's hands down my favorite. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Yeah. So looking at your Kickstarter on KickTrack, it's kind of funny. It's like the shape of your, we'll call it curve right now, is about the same, but the quantities are vastly different.
Yes.
It's like, oh, it really dropped down, but I'm looking, it's like, no, those are really good numbers. Those per day, if you could do that per day for the rest of your life, you'd be a rich man.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I got to stay away from KickTrack because, man, it shows you that the projected goal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do how many million? No,
it says right now you're going to do, right now, of course it's down, I'm sure, from when you started, but right now you're set at really $250,000.
Okay. Yeah.
So, okay.
I mean, that would be wonderful, but yeah, it's not happening.
We know it's not going to happen. But we do know, but I do think you're going to, I think your daily stuff, it might drop a little bit, but I think you're going to have a pretty strong daily throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, we're really I'm really trying to do as much promotion and stuff as we can. We got ads running, and just we're very blessed. I keep saying that, but I really feel so grateful. But we're very blessed. This game is getting very good word of mouth. So more than any of our other games, people are talking about this game and telling other people about this game, which is helping a ton. So hats off to my backers. They're the ones making the difference in the campaign right now.
Yeah. No, it's pretty impressive. So you'll have to maybe later on you can once Kickstarter's over, you can share about how well the advertising worked.
Yeah, for sure.
That's another one. I'm not done. I think that's probably one that's kind of, it could probably either work or not work. It's hard to.
Well, I will say that I started advertising for Kickstarters about 5 Kickstarters ago, and the ads that I've run have primarily been through Facebook, and I will tell you that I see a significant bump in revenue from that. So, if I spend $100 on an ad or $200 on an ad, I typically see $500 to $1,000 return on investment. So far, it's all worked out really well for me. So I'll have to let you know how this one goes. But I would say the last few projects I've done have been smaller projects, and they, just by scope and also by support, but they're kind of very niche. But they wouldn't have gotten to where they were at without advertising via Facebook and things like that. So I do recommend it.
Okay, well, I've got I think maybe less than 2 weeks before I'll be launching my Kickstarter. So maybe I'll just why not just throw a few. I can't remember my presidents. Maybe throw a few Abraham Lincolns or who's the hundreds. I can't remember. Maybe I'll give that a try.
Yeah,
because it's it's just but you got to have the product to support it too. I mean, it's not just where you apparently you have in the past.
Yeah. So I mean, we got a pretty loyal fan base, which some people come out and they just buy whatever I put out, which is amazing. It floors me because like I said, I've been doing this for a while now, and I'm on my 20 plus Kickstarters, and so to see the same people backing you each and every go round is just amazing. And then for that to continue to grow has been awesome. So yeah, it's as much as building community goes, that's kind of my number one priority. But then as far as revenue, I do see the most bumps anyways from advertising. The campaigns that I did without advertising were you don't get your product in front of enough eyes. You know what I mean? Like with Kickstarter's got this thing called the smart audience, and so they go through and hit up people, and it's worked out really well to my benefit as far as not just getting revenue, but growing my core audience, which is my number one goal as a business person.
So you see Kickstarter has, what do they have?
I'm sorry, not Kickstarter, Facebook has. Yeah, they have a thing. It's called Smart Audience.
Okay.
So it will they'll pick people that through the posts and stuff that they've liked previously to their algorithm.
The algorithm, the evil algorithm, yes.
Yeah, and it works. So yeah, I would recommend that. So
yeah, I've never had a problem with algorithms trying to sell me stuff. But what makes me mad is they present me with things I've already bought or things I don't want to buy.
Right.
But they're smart enough to tell me what I want. Like, that's a perfect world. And I think they're, for some things it's obvious. I mean, with role-playing games and with the Facebook groups and whatever, they're able to start tying things in together pretty well.
Definitely.
Because it's like talking to people who've tried to sell fiction. We have it so much easier, I think.
I think so too.
Because if you say I'm going to an OSC product, you can put on an OSC Facebook group and go to an OSC Discord. You can put on Kickstarter, put OSC in the wording, and the juice kind of works. Where it's all of a sudden you want to sell, a fantasy romance novel. It's like, well, where you really go, there's no, like, you're not seeing a congregation of people with fans that maybe there is, but as far as buying fans, where it seems like, Facebook and a lot of these other places, there is a congregation of people who are wanting product.
Yeah. Now I will say that, because I do have a little experience with fiction and stuff, selling fiction through Amazon or through Kindle is a lot easier than it is, or that I found, than it is selling RPGs through like Facebook groups and other things like that. People
Right.
who do Kindle, people who do Amazon. So not so much the physical books, but the ebooks.
Well,
People go there looking for that.
yeah, I mean, I think you have to tie with the Kickstarter. Just throwing it out there isn't enough. So there's something about Kickstarter that gets everybody all crazy.
Yes, it very much so. The fear of missing out. Yep.
Yeah, it's like, because I did Backer Kit, and I was shocked at how well the Backer Kit did.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I was selling sometimes the same items, it's just people missed out the first time. Somehow, just I don't know. It's kind of wild. Right. It is definitely. But you say for the fiction, though, it's worked out fine for you selling fiction.
Through not through print publication,
right? Just electronic.
The EPUBs are I mean, people will go there specifically look for things like, and their algorithms make it really easy to find like or similar things based on what you tag it. So
yeah, I'm also looking on the lines of creating a setting and maybe paying for writing a fiction and do it as an experiment.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it becomes, with me, it's been hard because we do so much here at Bloat Games that I had to kind of lay off the whole fiction thing because I was running two businesses at one time, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I found that draining on myself, but that was also when I was working a full-time job as well. So it's actually something I'm looking to get back into. I had planned on using next month are you familiar with NaNoWriMo? Yeah, so I had planned on doing a novel for NaNoWriMo, but I don't think that's going to happen as well as this Kickstarter is doing. I think I'm going to be a little too busy.
Right. I me myself, I will not. I mean, I'm not a novel writer. Mm-hmm. I could write a novel. I could write a novel book, but it would not be a good novel.
Oh, I didn't say I write novels. That wasn't one of the prerequisites.
So anyway, I that's something. It's like, I don't know. But I thought, I don't know. There's some things I want to try. I want to try and get more, try and grow into the publishing arena, and maybe look at some different avenues, because you don't want all your eggs in one basket.
Right.
It's like the OSC is great, but it's like, putting out a zine for the OSC. I can't remember, mentioned about something like, I was asking how many I'd be going to do a year. I can't remember. I said I don't want to oversaturate, or somebody's like, like I thought that wasn't possible. But there's a certain point where, maybe not. I don't know. There's got to be a certain point where you can put out a zine for an OSC zine every month, and people, maybe not. Maybe people will keep buying it. I don't know. But it's like, might be a good idea to, try something for Traveler, maybe try something for, something else, and just kind of spread things out a little bit, so that you're not, new people with money, I guess, is you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I worry about that because of the amount of stuff that we put out here. I worry about that quite often. Is like, I never know how much is too much. I haven't, had the bottom fall out yet, so I think I'm doing okay. But that is a concern that I have all the time. Is, I mean, this year we've done 6 Kickstarters, so we're like, and a lot of them were for smaller projects that were, very easy to deliver and stuff. But it's still six times I'm asking people to spend money on
yeah. That's kind of what I went through with Gary's Appendix. I'm planning on launching Fane here in a couple of weeks. I'm just like, it hasn't been that long, but this is what people want. They're going to buy it. I think there's a lot of people who, I mean, things are not good for a lot of people, but there's also just a lot of people who are older and have money, and the kids are growing up or whatever, and they can just now have that flexibility to buy those things. So I don't know. It's hard because you can't see all realities. That's the problem.
Yes, exactly. Well, and one thing, I used to manage an office supply store like 20 years ago, and I had a general manager who I will say, not a general manager, but a district manager, who I will say was a complete jerk. I couldn't stand him. But he shared one thing with me that I was like, oh, that's a nugget of truth that I'm going to hold on to. He told me, don't shop with other people's wallets, which means, because like he saw that we were selling a lot more of our inexpensive laptops. And he said, well, why are you selling more of your inexpensive laptops? And I said, well, the truth is, the people who come here to buy this, they don't want to pay, $3,000 for a laptop. They're looking for the $599 special. And he said, are you starting by showing them the $3,000 laptop? And I said, no, I do not. And he said, are you showing them it at all? I said, well, typically I start with like the best deal of the week and work that way. He said, well, you're shopping with their wallets. He said, what kind of car do you drive? And I said, I think at the time I was driving a station wagon, Mercury Sable station wagon. And he said, well, I drive a BMW. He goes, Eric, I'm not being a jerk. I make a lot more money than you. I may want to see that $3,000 laptop. If you start showing me the cheaper one and then you show me 3 or 4 different laptops, I pick the one in the middle. You never even showed me the one that I may want. So you know what? He's on to something there. So I had to give him a little credit. And so that's a small portion of how I've ran Bloat Games, is not to shop with other people's wallets, to put it out there. And if it's something that they want, they will get. And if it's something that they don't want, they don't have to get it. So.
Yeah, I think, and that is true. And I think, and I'm thinking about actually going with a hardback this time, which is new for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very easy, because it's very easy. I think it's very easy sometimes to not think people are going to get stuff without even thinking about, well, what if I did offer it? And what if, and a lot of this is because Zach challenged me on this. And I went back and forth where I was like, because originally the idea for Fane was just to make it a comic book. It's the same size as a comic book.
Mm-hmm.
And the cover's like that of a comic book. And the idea was to kind of do that. And he's like, when I showed him what I had, he's like, well, I think this needs to be a hardback. So I kind of went back and forth, but it's just like, no, I think you can make it work. Offer a paperback and hardback.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what you're telling me is, but push the hardcover.
Well, I would say make it an offer.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's kind of funny. It's like, not so much you just put it back. You don't put it at it's something you want to offer and show and demonstrate, not put it in the back of the room,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. For sure.
So how long have you been doing Bloat Games? So you've been doing Bloat Games full time?
I've been doing it full time for about just a little over a year. Yeah. I finally got to the point with Bloat Games to where I was working. I would work like 9 to 10 hours a day at my day job, 5 days a week, and then I was working every other waking moment pretty much at Bloat Games. And I kind of hit a wall on Bloat Games. Couldn't go any further without me quitting my job. But to do that, I had to lose that income, which, is a hard thing to walk away from. But so
yes, it is.
Yeah. So I did it, and it was rough for a few months. I ain't gonna lie. There was a ramping up period, but things are slowly approaching. Like I said, I've been at it a little over a year, and things are approaching to where it's not as devastating of a blow as it felt like the first month out. So luckily I'm in a position to where like I didn't have to earn the money I was earning before. But with that being said, you still got family, still got to take care of everybody. And I am able to do that. We've been making it work. So, but that's part of the reason why we had 6 Kickstarters this year. Was a few of those were what I jokingly called to keep the lights on at Bloat Games headquarters. Kickstarters, just to make sure you get, you got a slow month, you got to make sure you get that covered. So,
that makes sense. And that's what I've been looking at. I mean, I'm at a position where I could realistically retire from my job in a couple of years, but also know it's easy to talk the big talk, and it's another one to give up the goal, like what they call the golden handcuffs. It's like, I will never probably make as much money as easily as I do doing my current job, but there's a point where it's just like, I'm tired of the stress, I'm tired of the hassle, and there's more to life than just going to work and being stressed.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's what led me to do it. My mom, like 4 years ago, was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and it was a terminal thing. They said she had 9 months to live at the time, but like I said, it's over 4 years, and she's actually still alive.
Wow.
And yeah, so we're very fortunate. But when that occurred, it was made very clear to me from my boss's boss that my mom having cancer was not a priority for them, and that the priority was me being at work and not going to doctor's appointment, not taking her to doctor's appointments, and so it very much made the decision very easy for me.
Oh, what a terrible person.
Yeah, so there was literally a day where my boss's boss was getting on me and telling me that that this wasn't something that I need to worry about. I need to worry about what they needed, and I walked out of that meeting and I said I will quit this job within a year to myself, and I did. And I am much happier and much more relieved, much less stressed than I was even before that stuff had happened. It's funny, you go from being like the star player at a job to very quickly like getting in trouble for taking your mom to the cancer doctor. It does a lot to quickly run you off, make you realize, oh, you're just a person here. It doesn't matter what you're doing for it. You're
not even a person, you're just a tool.
Yeah.
You're just an asset. They've already now I forgot the term where you've what do you call it, where you have an asset and you over time you devalue the asset over
depreciation.
Yeah, you've been depreciated out.
Yeah, exactly.
They get rid of you. They squeeze it all out of you.
It was not a good place to be. So
yeah, I've been pretty fortunate. I work for a very large corporation, and they are really good about that sort of stuff. So or mostly good. So I've been fortunate, but yes, it's still there's a point where, but I think that, but I started doing the calculations. It's like, it's like, well, if I could, you said you did 6, I'm thinking, well, if I could do 5, then I saw, with Gary's Appendix doing reasonably well. It's like, well, I don't know that every Kickstarter can do that well, but it's start doing the math. It's like, if I can do 5 a year, there's that much, potential money, and if work a part-time job and whatever else, maybe it's doable.
Yep, for sure.
Because I really just want to spend the rest of my days wearing cargo shorts, a t-shirt, and maybe a flannel pullover. Not flannel, but a polar fleece pullover. That's my favorite. If it gets too cold, I just go south. That's what I would love to do. Yep. But that's the dream job for me. Seeing my garage door open, sunshine burning down, typing away.
Yep. Same here.
Well, you are living. You are the dream is becoming more of a dream. I think it sounds like for you every with each passing year, you're now doing this full time, and congratulations. I would like to go longer, Eric, but man, my voice is starting to
no worries.
Yeah. So amazing time, Eric. You have to have you back on.
Okay. That'd be great.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and man, congratulations on that Kickstarter. It's you know what? For all of you who are listening who haven't gone in, you don't want to miss out.
Exactly. Back now.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have you back on, Eric. You take care. Great luck on your Kickstarter. Looks like you're well on the way to making up for that terrible first month or two when you started.
Right.
Out.
Exactly.
Okay. We take care.
All right. You too.